We often see public figures through, well, a really specific lens, don't we?
Yes.
Shaped by headlines, maybe a soundbite here and there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's often quite narrow.
But what happens when that perception clashes really dramatically with a person's own reality?
That's a great question.
Think about Marco Kroon. Here's a guy, he earned the highest military honor in the Netherlands, the Willem-Alexander Military Sword for Bravery.
A huge deal.
And almost straight away finds himself in this, well, media storm. It's just a fascinating story of public image versus personal experience.
It really is.
And that's exactly what we want to dig into today using this incredibly candid YouTube interview he gave recently.
Yeah, and what's really striking is that contrast you mentioned. You've got this highly decorated soldier, bravery in Afghanistan, Iraq, multiple deployments.
Right.
And then suddenly he's tangled up in controversy. So this deep dive, it's not just about listing events.
Yeah.
It's about trying to grasp the complexities, as he tells it, maybe see beyond those surface narratives we all heard.
Exactly. So let's start with the man himself. Who is Marco Kroon, like away from all that media stuff?
Well, he describes himself as born and raised military, always wanted to serve his country. That seems core to him.
Okay. And he's 55 now.
Yeah, 55. Lived a life, I think it's fair to say, most of us can hardly picture.
Right. And there's that interesting link with Johan Derksen, the commentator.
Oh, yeah. Derksen, known for his, let's say, edgy takes, sometimes about Kroon himself.
But what really stands out for me is that conflict he talks about. Being a commando, you're trained to be unseen, right? Out of the spotlights.
Exactly. Anonymity is key.
And then, boom, he gets this massive award and he's thrust right into the national spotlight.
It's a huge paradox, isn't it? The job demands secrecy, operating in the shadows.
Yeah.
And then this national recognition just pulls him out into the open, strips away the anonymity, and puts him under this intense microscope.
You have to wonder what that does psychologically. Going from total secrecy to, well, public property almost overnight.
Definitely a massive adjustment.
And that public image, as he sees it anyway, it took a real beating. He doesn't pull any punches. Says, the media has destroyed me.
Wow. Strong words.
And claims, like 70%, a huge chunk of what was written just wasn't true. He felt his reputation was broken. Though he thinks it's maybe slowly healing now, as people maybe start questioning if the media always gets it right.
Right. A sense that maybe the narrative isn't the whole story.
And it's interesting. He's talking to the media now, for his new book.
Yeah.
But he says it's on his terms. He wants a good feeling about it.
Well, that makes sense. It sounds like he's trying to regain some control over his own story.
Yeah.
After feeling, misrepresented, damaged, deciding to talk again, even selectively. It just shows how much that public perception matters and how hard it is to reclaim your narrative.
Okay, so let's get into some of those specifics that really fueled that negative picture, the cups to the headbutt incident.
Right, during Carnival, public urination involved, I believe.
Yeah, that's the one. It became this huge thing. But Kroon is adamant. He says he did not intentionally headbutt that police officer.
Okay, so what's his explanation then?
It's tied really deeply to his military background.
Yeah.
He talks about being in combat mode constantly because of his deployments.
Ah, okay. So his baseline reaction is different.
That's what he argues.
Yeah.
That his normal was just different because of that conditioning.
Well, that idea of conditioned responses, it's a real thing in psychology and military training.
Right.
His suggestion that, this heightened awareness, these combat reflexes, maybe they just manifested differently in a civilian situation. It raises questions, doesn't it, about the long-term effects of that kind of intense experience.
And how easily it could be misinterpreted in, everyday life.
Exactly. Misinterpretation is key there.
And he adds a physical element, too. He says he was handcuffed for like 45 minutes.
Wow, that's a long time.
And he claims it caused nerve damage in his left hand. So he believes these involuntary movements, because of the nerve damage, that's what you see on the video.
Okay, so he's attributing the movement to a physical injury caused during the arrest.
Yeah. And on top of that, he alleges the police basically covered up their own mishandling of it all. Says they fabricated the official report.
So serious accusations against the police there, covering their own failing policy was the phrase he used.
I think so, yeah. So even with video footage, he completely denies the intent.
It really highlights how tricky interpreting behavior can be, doesn't it? Even with video.
Totally.
A video seems objective, but his explanation throws in subjective experience, physical conditions. It leads to completely different readings of the same event.
Yeah, and it raises that whole issue of trust in official accounts versus, someone's personal testimony.
Definitely. Conflicting narratives.
Then there were those really serious drug allegations.
Okay, that was another major story.
Kroon says, flat out, the police put out information saying he tested positive for drugs.
Which he denies?
Completely. Says it was later scientifically proven false. He calls it pure character assassination.
Wow, if that's true, that's incredibly damaging.
He even suggests some motive. Thinks the Bosch police maybe had a vendetta against him.
A vendetta? Why?
Possibly bruised egos, he suggests. Because earlier weapons and drug charges back in 2010 didn't stick. Nothing came of them.
Okay, so he's connecting dots there, suggesting a pattern.
Yeah, and he even brings up that film De Verlini, The Fireline, saying it similarly misrepresented his legal fights.
Interesting parallel. The broader point here, I suppose, is how damaging misinformation can be, even if it's corrected later.
The mud sticks, right?
Exactly. And his theory of a vendetta, whether provable or not, it shows this really deep feeling of being unfairly targeted.
Yeah.
Maybe even abused by the system meant to deliver justice.
Yeah, a profound sense of injustice. Okay, let's shift gears a little. It's quite powerful hearing him talk about how his missions, 10 of them actually changed him.
How does he describe that change?
He says it made him more pragmatic, less likely to complain about small stuff, gave some perspective.
Relativizing things, yeah. That makes sense after what he must have seen.
He does acknowledge having PTSD. He just calls it 4 letters.
Okay.
But he believes he's healed now. He says everyone carries their experiences, their baggage.
Right. It's part of his history, but he feels he's moved through it.
He sees his time in service as this hardening process, but one that also made him appreciate life more. The contrast he paints before and after is really stark.
That resonates with what you hear from many veterans, doesn't it? That profound shift in worldview.
Yeah.
The pragmatism, the resilience. You could see those as coping mechanisms developed in response to, well, incredibly intense traumatic events.
And his way of talking about PTSD, just 4 letters, it's maybe his personal way of handling it, but it does touch on how differently people process trauma.
True. There's no single way.
So this whole journey brings us to his new book, Parat, which means prepared.
Ah, right. And the focus shifts here, doesn't it?
Totally. It's not about his military past so much, but about civilian preparedness, self-reliance, in the Netherlands specifically.
Interesting pivot from soldier to preparedness advocate.
Kind of, yeah. He says his motivation is serving the country in a different way now, offering practical tips, tools for potential crises.
Like what sort of crises?
Anything from war, cyber attacks, to natural disasters. He really thinks the Netherlands needs to take this preparedness thing more seriously.
Okay, so basic stuff.
Yeah, like having water, non-perishable food, the basics. He tells this little story about a survival 10 from a 2-week exercise in Germany.
Oh, yeah. What was in it?
Just highlighting essential items,
Yeah.
But importantly, he stresses it's not just about stuff. It's about mindset, community, how you face these things together.
That makes sense. It's a significant evolution for him, moving from active duty to this kind of advocacy.
Yeah.
It feels like he's rechanneling his expertise, wanting to contribute to national safety in a new way. And that theme of self-reliance, well, it certainly taps into current global anxieties about security.
It definitely feels timely.
Yeah.
But his experiences with the justice system seem to have left really deep marks.
Understandably, given what he's described.
He says he's lost trust in the public prosecution service, the OM.
Yeah.
Completely.
Really.
He even claims some police officers just aren't trustworthy, that they might, adjust their statements. He sort of alluded to current events but didn't get specific.
That's a strong claim.
And he talks about his own disappointment. He reported being a victim himself of a serious crime during a secret mission.
Okay.
But he felt it wasn't believed, wasn't investigated properly, which leads to this really difficult revelation.
What's that?
The rape, he says, he suffered during a mission in Afghanistan.
Oh, wow. That's horrific.
He initially only told people within the defense organization, but somehow the OM found out.
I see.
And then he mentions, kind of briefly, neutralizing one of the perpetrators. Doesn't go into detail.
Right. A very loaded term.
He blames the lack of official investigation into the rape, partly on the secret nature of his work. How hard it is to investigate something like that from afar, years later, in a classified context.
These are incredibly serious, deeply disturbing things he's bringing up. And that loss of trust in the justice system, it feels almost inevitable after experiences like that.
Yeah.
The challenges he describes, just getting his own victimization acknowledged, let alone investigated, It really underlines the complexities, maybe the limits of accountability inside these highly classified operations.
Absolutely. And that mention of neutralization, it just hints at the deep, complex ways trauma can play out.
Long-lasting effects.
So when you think about all this,
Yeah,
his feelings about that Willem Alexander medal are really, really complex.
I can imagine. How does he view it now, in retrospect?
Kind of conflicted. He sees it as the thing that brought all that intense scrutiny down on him.
Right, the catalyst in a way.
But also, maybe, possibly, the thing that stopped him from completely derailing, as he put it, after the trauma.
Like an anchor almost, even if it caused other problems.
Maybe. He even says he felt like a liar getting the award because he was holding back the truth about the rape. God, that's heavy, the internal conflict there. Yeah. And he clearly thinks that without the high profile of that award, maybe the negative media stuff wouldn't have happened, or not as intensely.
Plausible. It definitely put him on a different pedestal.
He also makes this interesting distinction. You know how for recent civilian honors, they expect unblemished behavior?
Yeah, that's usually a requirement.
He sort of contrasts that with military bravery awards, suggesting the historical context there might be different, more accepting of complexity, perhaps.
That's an interesting point about how we judge different kinds of service and sacrifice. Are the standards different? Should they be?
Yeah, food for thought. Finally, he gives us a bit of a window into his own resilience, his personal journey.
How so?
He talks pretty openly about struggling with alcohol, using it to cope after everything he went through.
Which is sadly common for people dealing with trauma.
Yeah. But he says he's in a good place now, though he admits he has a dark sense of humor.
Probably helps, I imagine.
He still feels this powerful sense of injustice, though. Especially that the people he believes wronged him are still, in positions of power.
That must be incredibly frustrating.
He defines himself by loyalty
Yeah.
to himself, his name, his country, and he hopes his kids will eventually understand his choices, forgive his absences.
That's very personal. Adds another layer entirely.
And his idea of real pride. It's not the medals. It's the positive impact he can have on other people, helping them.
It's powerful that he shares the struggle with alcohol. It shows the human cost, doesn't it? And the difficult path to healing.
Definitely.
And that focus on core values, loyalty, service despite everything, it gives you a real insight into his character.
So wrapping this up, as we finish this deep dive into Marco Kroon's own story, what emerges is this really multifaceted picture.
Yeah, definitely not black and white.
We've touched on the huge impact of the media, the arguments around those key incidents, the way his military service changed him.
His new focus on preparedness and that really complex relationship with the award itself. Recognition versus scrutiny.
By really listening to his side, from his perspective, we've hopefully moved beyond just the headlines.
Right, to get a more nuanced view of the person. The insights really come from understanding the context he gives, even for the controversial stuff.
Even when it's still open to interpretation.
Exactly.
And maybe that leaves us, and you listening, with a final thought. Just consider the immense power of public perception.
Yeah, how it shapes things, but also how it can distort personal truth.
How easily narratives get built, how quickly people are judged, often on, let's face it, incomplete information.
Or biased information.
Right. So what's our responsibility as people taking in these stories? Do we need to look harder beyond the surface?
Consider the complexities of just being human.
Exactly. It's just a powerful reminder, isn't it?
Yeah.
There are often deeper truths behind the stories we hear. Worth thinking about.